Yes, guys, what's happening? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to this evening's live stream. We've got a packed show for you actually today. Lots to get through. New links with Fofana and Dumfries, potential outgoings as well with the likes of Timo Werner, Michy Batshuayi. Potentially got permanent moves away from the club or loan moves. The future of Kepa. We've brought in a new goalkeeper as well. Look back over the pre-season with two good victories against Udinese. But first things first, I just want to say a massive congratulations to the England ladies for winning the European Championships at Wembley, an extra time victory against Germany. So congratulations to them. Great to see. It's great for the country, great for the women's game. So yeah, we're delighted with that. But yeah, back to Chelsea and back to the matter at hand. I'm delighted to be joined by Oli Carpenter tonight, mate. Thanks for coming back as always. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to this one. It's got a bit, I have to say, it's getting a bit concerned. Obviously, we lost to Arsenal. We're then thinking, right, okay, things aren't going well. Tuchel was pissed after that game, said a lot of things that were home truths, but also quite harsh to the players, really. But should serve as a bit of a wake-up call. I then thought, right, let's get some business done in that week. That week passed, nothing happened. Get to the weekend, we play well Friday night against Udinese. We play well on the Saturday as well. Or not a great level of opposition, but our best pre-season performances for sure. And you're thinking, right, we've got a week to the season now. We still got positions to address. But finally, coming from David Ornstein, who's one of the most reliable out there, sort of links been doing the rounds beforehand. But this is kind of the first, what we probably describe as concrete confirmation, really, that Chelsea are working on deals to sign both Wesley Fofana and Denzel Dumfries. Leicester thought to value Fofana at 80 to 85 million pounds. But Chelsea hope offering players may lower the price. Dumfries' interest also further, and Inter Milan need to raise funds. Obviously, Oli, we've been linked with a plethora of centre-backs throughout the window. Obviously, De Ligt chose Bayern instead of us. We weren't prepared to pay for Nathan Ake. They had the whole debacle of the Koundé deal. Kimpembe, that's still possibly there, but he prefers to stay at Paris, seemingly. So we're now on to Wesley Fofana. Now, this is one where Chelsea have actually had a reasonably long-term interest in the player, but with the season starting in less than a week's time, Leicester, obviously one of their main assets, and it doesn't leave them much time to bring someone else in. Two questions, mate. Fofana, the right profile, would that be an exciting sign? I think it would be a phenomenal signing. And two, how likely do you think it actually is? Because this is a lot of money, and deals with this sort of money take a reasonable amount of time to actually get done.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's great to be here, and also congratulations to the Lionesses. Like you said, great for the women's game. Maybe we need Millie Bright at centre back. Maybe that's what we need. Anyway, I think this would be a phenomenal deal. I think it'd be a really, really good deal. The good thing about signing a player this close to the end of the transfer window from the Premier League is obviously that they won't need time to bed in, which is really important. We know Fofana's quality. We know he's been quality for Leicester. It would be the sort of player that it's actually not worth much of the risk in order to overpay for him, which I think is maybe what they're looking at. The other important thing though is in terms of the actual value of Fofana is Leicester haven't bought anyone in this window. They've been entirely quiet on the transfer market. They've literally bought nobody. And it's very clear, as what it seems from other sources that I've read personally online, that actually Leicester need to sell to buy. And that, to me, would tell me that we could actually get Fofana for a slightly cut price fee. Instead of maybe 80, 85 million, we're looking at maybe 65, 70, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think it would be a great signing. But it does beg the question, mate, if we're prepared to spend 65, 70 million pounds on Fofana, which it looks like we could well be prepared to do, why didn't we spend that money on De Ligt if he was seemingly the number one target for this window in the defence? And also, why this kind of late in the window and this close to the season are we now switching attentions to Fofana? Surely, if we were this interested in him and it's a big fee, why was he not the main target at the start of the season? Or do you think he perhaps was up there and we've now sort of got to the point in the window where actually there's more of a realistic chance of Leicester actually wanting to sell? We've kind of revisited it. I mean, what do you put that down to? Because I feel that a player of his quality and that price, he perhaps should have been a target from the off.
Maybe, and maybe it was looking at first about actually who the owners looking at the centre-back market and looking at who was actually available. We all knew that De Ligt was available. We all knew Koundé was available. and those deals, therefore, in theory, would have been easier to get done than Leicester, than working with Leicester over a centre back who they don't really want to sell. The other thing you could say is that Koundé chose Barca, De Ligt chose Bayern, right? So, like, at the end of the day, despite agreeing the fee, any fee with the club, despite what we can agree with the player, if they don't pick Chelsea, they're not coming, right? So, and that's why it would be good to go for Fofana, because I don't think anyone else is going in for him, because I don't think anyone else can really afford to. So maybe it's that actually Fofana was actually seen less of a reasonable option in terms of what they could actually afford, what they could manage, or like what could actually be maybe they thought the likes of De Ligt and Koundé were cheaper as good choices, and now we're out of cheaper choices. And so, now maybe they've turned their attention to Koundé, which, like you said, they've always had an idea of that they wanted him, but maybe it's just turning to other options and seeing what's available.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, report here saying that Chelsea potentially hoping to offer players to maybe lower that price. We've seen Bowley try and do this with a number of deals. It's very much a kind of an American sports thing that you see swap deals in the NBA and in the Major League Baseball and stuff. You don't see it very often in football at all. I mean, personally, depends on who the players are, of course. If it's someone like Ross Barkley and Michy Batshuayi, for example, by all means, absolutely do it. But if we're talking potentially maybe someone like Levi Colwill, then I'm not sure. And if Conor Gallagher or Ethan Ampadu or whatever, I think it depends on what players it is, first of all. But second of all, as I said, there's so many variables in football when you're trying to do swap deals. You've got to agree with so many different parties, so many agents, so many players. It's why you very, very rarely see it. I mean, are you surprised that we're still trying to pursue these kind of players plus cash, and it's not really a swap deal, but you're including players to try and bring the price down? You don't really see these deals very often. We've got a lot of players we need to get rid of, but are you surprised that given how we've tried this before this window and had no success whatsoever, that we're potentially exploring that option again?
Well, to be honest, I'm not. One, because it's all Bowley knows, right? Like in American sports, it's you would expect him to attempt to use strategies that he knows in American sports, and whether it's working or not, I think actually isn't quite so cut and dry. And you could say, well, we haven't got rid of any players, we've not made any swap deals, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not working, because there are still always negotiations going on. Yeah. We've negotiated with a lot of teams about, do you want to have this player or that player? If you remember, for I think it was for De Ligt at one point, we were talking about Pulisic, we were talking about Werner, and so we've actually teams actually are interested, but ultimately I think it's a harder deal to get done, and that's probably why it doesn't happen so often. But yeah, I think it would be interesting to see if we could offer players to go the other way in order to get Fofana. I think ultimately we'll end up just stumping up the money. But one player who I thought would actually be excellent for them is, if we could include him in a swap, is Timo Werner, because Leicester play a very good brand of counter-attacking football, which would suit Werner very well. Of course, he'd have to take a pay cut to go there. Same as is reported going back to Leipzig, he'd be taking a 50% pay cut to do that. So he is open to a pay cut. So there's definitely an option there, in my opinion. I think he would absolutely explode for Leicester. He's like Vardy, but maybe a bit quicker and less clinical.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, there's definitely options there, but I mean, one option that I feel that I don't think we should do. Again, it depends on who else were to come in, but I wouldn't be happy with potentially including Levi Colwill. I just think
it seems like the wrong choice, doesn't it? Because
you're
not trying to get rid of more centre backs. You need more.
This is it.
If you do one in, one out, you may as well have just kept Colwill.
Yeah, well, this is precisely it. I mean, I just see that as not the right thing to do. I've seen people say, maybe put a buyback clause and stuff. And I just don't really see the point. You might as well just load him out if you're going to do that. There's no point selling and then buying back for more money than you paid him for. Than we received in the first place. And we've done that a number of times before. So, yeah, I wouldn't be up for including Colwill. But I think ultimately, if it came down to it and the only way to get Fofana in was to let Colwill go, I'd probably still do it. I mean, if it was down to that, mate, would you do that, or would you walk away from the deal?
Well, I think if that was the only option, it would have to be under the guise of having a buyback
Yeah.
clause. And that's the sort of thing where actually that's the sort of thing where a buyback is actually useful, where you actually don't really want to get rid of the player,
No.
but if it helps facilitate the deal, do it. Then have the plan to buy them back. And then because that clause can be triggered automatically. Like when the club goes to trigger that clause, then they can just come back and there's no mush, no rubbish, no negotiations. It just happens. So that's certainly an option, especially you could see that in terms of if Thiago Silva then goes on to retire in a season or two or he leaves Chelsea, then you're going to need to bring someone in anyway. So, but usually the only thing is these buyback clauses are usually only valid after 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah.
Which is what one of the issues we had with Livramento is actually his buyback clause isn't available until next summer, when we were looking at possibly buying him back anyway. So it's an interesting long-term strategy, but I think actually ultimately Colwill will develop better around the Chelsea squad, even if he doesn't play as much. Having tutelage under the likes of Koulibaly and Thiago Silva, that's going to be really, really helpful for him. And like I said, if you're going to just give him to Leicester to get Fofana back, that's still only one centre-back in, one centre-back out. You've not actually made any difference in terms of the positions you're trying to keep up with. So ultimately, I would say, if it was the only option, I would do it with a buyback. But if there was any option to have Colwill not leave, I would do that instead.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree, man. And this one does seem to be hotting up a little bit. As you say, we're desperate for centre-backs. We'll get on to some other centre-back targets in a sec. But mate, 2 questions. Are you expecting a bid to go in this week? I feel that a bid has got to go in this week for Fofana.
I think it's been reported that a bid may have already gone in. I've seen it say that it's possibly 70 million. But I don't know how concrete that was. That's what I've seen online. I mean, so do you think take it with a pinch of salt.
A bid this week's got to be essential, hasn't it? Surely, like if we're going to get this player in, we need to do it as soon as possible. So you would think a bid should be going in tomorrow or at least Tuesday at the earliest, if it hasn't already done so.
Needs to be before the first game of the season, 100%. No matter what. And the way these things work, like you say, it's a lot of money. Negotiations take time. Sooner rather than later is obviously better. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, last thing on Fofana, mate. How likely do you think we are to get this deal done? Do you think we're going to be seeing him in a Chelsea shirt this coming season? As things stand now, how confident are you on a deal being done? I would say about 60%. Leicester are a club who don't really tend to want to haggle over prices, so you pay what they want. The only thing is obviously they need to sell to buy. So that might allow for a little bit of negotiation, which might take a little bit, which is why I think it might take a bit of time. But I'm reasonably confident something like this could be done because, Chelsea are in the market for a centre-back. Obviously, we've got the money to stump up for it. Leicester have the player we want. We have the money to give them the player, to buy the player off them. There's no reason in theory why it shouldn't work other than really penny pinching. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, definitely one to watch out for next week. I think there should be some developments in the coming days, but he would be a phenomenal signing. And I think right now he probably is the main target at centre-back. He might be the best option out of all the centre-backs we've gone through, except for Koulibaly. Yeah. He might actually be the best answer, which would be quite fortunate in a way, considering all the centre-backs Chelsea have actually gone for this window and not ended up going for in the end, or not getting for one reason or another. We might actually stumble into the best target possible. Yeah, no, in a strange way, I do agree, mate. It's kind of come almost full circle, and all the targets are kind of missed out on players that don't want to come. We might actually end up with one that is potentially or arguably actually better than the lot of them. But yeah, we'll have to see what happens with that one, mate. But just on other targets, because let's be honest, I think ideally Chelsea would want to bring in 2 centre backs, so potentially Fofana and another of the players we're still linked with, the likes of your Kimpembes, your Skriniars, Gvardiol as well. I mean, that's more seems to be a swap deal or something with Timo Werner going on loan. I'm not sure Leipzig will accept that. But out of kind of those 3 names, mate, which one would you like to see the most come in out of those 3, Kimpembe, Skriniar and Gvardiol? Well, obviously, I think Skriniar be the most expensive at about 59, 60 million pounds. Gvardiol, I think, is going to be tough to get. And Kimpembe, we have kind of explored that. And it seems like he wants to stay in Paris from the latest round of reports. But again, we might revisit that. Who else out of that list of players do you feel would be a good fit to come in? I think any of them could be good. Any of them could be a good option. Kimpembe specifically seems to be quite an experienced head, even though he's not that old. I think he's only something like 25, 26, something like that. He seems pretty good. Obviously, knows Tuchel, knows Silva. So there's chemistry there, which is always important, especially when you're looking to adapt into the league. It's the only reason that I'm a little bit. I think Gvardiol looks like the best option on paper, but again, with the Bundesliga signings, people don't always understand how much time it can take to to get into the way that the Premier League plays. And we saw it, I think, with who was that? That was it, Upamecano, or the one that Liverpool bought a while ago. Konate, sorry, yeah, Konate. It's taken him a while to actually get back in and get into the swing of things in the Premier League. Phenomenal player, but it's taken him a while. And I think that's something Chelsea don't really want. We don't really want this. We don't want to have to wait for a signing to get good, especially because we're looking for starting centre backs. Although you could make the option: do we really need two more? Like, do we need two centre backs from now? Because we've already got Koulibaly. Say we do get Fofana. You've got Koulibaly, Silva, Fofana. You've got Chalobah, who play, and Colwill, right? That's 5 centre backs already. Ampadu can play centre back. James can play centre back.
Yeah.
Azpilicueta is still here.
Yeah.
He plays centre back as well. I'm not entirely sure it's actually necessary. And I think more than likely you'd be paying over the odds for someone who actually doesn't want to be here, will take a lot of time to adjust, or for whatever reason it just doesn't quite work out. And I think Chelsea are done with trying to make moves like that now. You can see through Koulibaly and Sterling that we've made excellent choices already in the signings department. We've also gone on to sign, or at least we're about to sign, Gogo Slanina from Chicago Fire, who's a great prospect goalkeeper. I think we really tend to be looking at the big money signings, like Sterling and Koulibaly are both big signings, but they're not world record fees and things like that. I think it's indicative of the new owner's approach of a smarter approach.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's something we definitely need to do, as we're finding out with the big struggles we're facing of trying to sell players that ultimately aren't good enough for the club, came in on big money, and now we just cannot get rid of them. So we need to make sure that we, in this new regime, that we avoid doing that, because it is biting us in the arse right now. The problems of the old regime, where bringing players in that aren't, admittedly, the managers probably wanted them at the time, but not really good enough, offered way too much money for them probably to try and get them to sign. And now we just cannot get rid of them, which is the big problem. We don't want to go down that route again. But yeah, I totally agree with you, mate. Now that we're at this stage of the window, I think we've got more than enough cover with Colwill, and as you said, Ampadu or Reece James can fill in at right centre back. I don't feel that it's necessary to go for 2 centre backs. I think one is fine. Then look at bringing in a wing back and an attacking player or whatever. Yeah. I think that's much better than trying to bring in 2 more centre backs at this late stage. I think we feel we've kind of left it too late to try and bring in 2 more. But yeah, I mean, for me, Fofana definitely the first choice, and then the other 3. I'm not sure if Skriniar at 60 mil. If we're going to spend 75 million or 70 million on Fofana, are we really going to then go and spend another 55, 60 million on Skriniar? We might do, but I'd find that unlikely. I think if we were to bring in 2 centre backs, it would very much be Fofana as the big one, and then it would perhaps be someone that's slightly cheaper, maybe slightly.
It's definitely lesser known. It's Fofana or one of the other options. I don't see it being both, especially, like you say, because we need to make a signing or 2 in other positions on the pitch as well, especially like wing back cover. Yeah. So especially with the recent reports of Emerson possibly, who also could play centre back, going to possibly Lazio this week. So there's a lot that's up in the air still for Chelsea, and I think they'll make the right choices. I hope so, at least.
Yeah, well, mate, we can always live in hope. We haven't always made the right choices as a club, but hopefully this is an opportunity to do that. But I mean, moving away from centre backs, and another area of the squad that massively needs addressing is the wing back area. We've seen it with Ben Chilwell and Reece James. We've got 2 of the best wing backs going, but as we know, injuries strike. It's a long season. There's 5 subs. There's multiple competitions. Probably another 60 plus game season for the club. Chile, obviously, he's not up to match. He's not up to speed yet. I don't know if it's wise for him to start the first game of the Premier League. I think he still needs more minutes. I think it would be wise to bed him in, give him minutes here and there, and build his fitness up, because he still looks a little bit off it in those pre-season games, which we'll obviously come on to shortly. And obviously, there's no depth in the wing back area. Like, for whatever reason, Alonso doesn't want to be here, but he's still playing at left wing back. Tuchel doesn't fancy Emerson at left wing back because, one, he kept Alonso over him last season, and secondly, in the pre-season, he's played Emerson at left centre back the vast majority of the time. So, yeah, it doesn't seem to make sense. And then obviously we've seen Callum Hudson-Odoi play right wing back in pre-season as well. Aspie, I think, is done there. He cannot play there. He's not got the legs for it. We've seen it last season. And then you're looking at it, and we're linked with Denzel Dumfries. Now, I'm not saying Dumfries is a bad player. We know Inter have kind of got financial difficulties while they sold Lukaku to us last season. They need to raise money. They would be open to selling Dumfries. But two things for me is that, yes, we want good squad depth and a challenge for James. But if I'm Dumfries, I'm playing regularly at Inter, which is a good standard of football. Let's make no mistake about it. Sorry, I might not be as good as the Premier League, but you're still playing a very good level of football. It's a World Cup year. You want to be playing regularly. I just feel that if Dumfries comes in, yes, it's good for us and the squad, but is he going to play regularly? You know, because part of my worry also is that if Dumfries signs, I've just got an awful feeling that we would end up playing Reece James at right centre-back with Dumfries at right wing-back, because I don't think Dumfries can play as a right centre-back. I've never seen him do that. I'm sure he could do a job, but it's not something you'd be particularly happy with. I mean, what are your thoughts on Dumfries? And do you think that signing would potentially mean that we would see more of Reece James at right centre-back?
I think it's an interesting idea. And I think to a certain degree it could work. I mean, as we've said, I think people are very hung up on the idea of Reece James being as a right centre-back. And I agree, because I think it takes away a lot of his attacking nous. If he still managed to get into attacking positions and forward progressive positions from centre back, a little bit like Aspie did for Morata, like that sort of early cross into the box. But obviously, James has got a good right foot on him as well, and a left foot. He's really good at shooting at striking the ball. So we want him to be in positions that we can actually get forward and strike the ball, as we saw in the last season before they both got injured. Our wing backs were the majority of the goal contributors for the team. So if you're going to be signing someone like that, you need someone who's going to be a needle mover. Is Dumfries that? Maybe, probably not. But the thing is I don't actually see. I don't see him as any more than just Reece James's right wing back cover. Sorry, because I think people are hung up on the idea of James going to centre back, and as I've stated, we've got enough players to cover at centre back, even if we're playing three at the back.
Yeah.
So I don't think that will happen. I think largely it's just a really long season, and last season James played almost entirely without cover at all. We put Aspie there as a sort of but it was a hospital pass, really.
Well, we had Callum and Pulisic there as well.
Like the amount of filling in that we had to do. So if we actually, it would be nice to get someone who's actually good in that position there and is actually worth it in that position there. So the other option as well, which I've seen over the last few days, is I think his name is Joachim Mæhle, Danish player.
Mæhle, from Atalanta, plays both sides. Yeah.
Exactly, plays both sides, which might be really helpful considering, if Alonso goes, then we might need backup. If we need a starting left wing back and Chilwell's not quite up for it, we can stick him there. If James is injured, we can put him there. I think the important thing, and I think what Tuchel's trying to do, is he's trying to build a team that's really like a Swiss Army knife, where every player is able to slot in here, there, and everywhere, wherever they can, in more of almost like a bit of a total football kind of sense. Like, for example, like Daley Blind would be a player that Tuchel would love, because he plays 7 different positions. Hullet, or even Azpilicueta, it's a player that Tuchel really likes because he can slot in, or at least in the past he has been able to slot in lots of places. Same with James, right back, centre back, sometimes played in midfield last season, did a good job. So and the same, you could even say the same with Loftus-Cheek at right wing back. So I think the other thing as well is probably Tuchel's looking at it in terms of actually each squad position affects another squad position. So if you have someone who plays right wing back who's actually properly a right wing back, you don't then have to play Loftus-Cheek at wing back. And he's good there, and in pre-season he did well there. But he doesn't have to play there. He can then play him in midfield, which then actually makes our midfield a little bit less strained with the likes of, Jorginho, Kovacic, and Kante, who are all competing for 2 spots. But you can have the likes of Loftus-Cheek or Gallagher or Gilmore or whoever rotate in when those guys are injured. So I think it's about having, I think Dumfries actually, or Mæhle, solves more problems than he brings.
Yeah, I agree.
So, you could see why they would do it. It seems like a sensible move to a certain degree, but people might have the hang-ups about Dumfries specifically, about, actually how good he actually is. And I've not seen a load of him play. No, he was good at the Euros, I thought, when he played for the Netherlands. But we all know international tournaments aren't really indicative of a player's true ability. So I think bringing in wing-back cover actually solves more problems for the squad than you might think. And I don't think it necessarily means James is going to be hampered at right centre-back, because Tuchel knows how good he is at right wing-back. And we've got the cover now, especially if we bring in someone like Fofana, there's no way that, if you're playing, even if you're playing three at the back, you've got Silva, Koulibaly, Fofana.
Yeah.
That's the starting centre-back three. And then you've got James on the right, and you've got Chilwell, Mailer, whatever, on the left-hand side. That's very formidable, and that's very strong. It might change it up a bit, like you say, when injuries come in, suspensions, all the rest of it. But I think actually bringing in an actual right wing-back would be very helpful.
Yeah, no, I agree. It would be. Yes, the 30, 40 million euros it would cost to bring in Dumfries does seem like a lot of money for someone that is predominantly going to be a backup. But at the end of the day, that's the market we're in at the moment. And, would he be a backup? I suppose, yes, but he'd still play a lot of minutes, given there's 5 subs, given how many games there are as well. I still think he would play a lot of minutes.
And James's injury record as well.
Yeah, exactly. These are all things to factor in. I think Dumfries would play a lot, but
it would be about trying to convince him, wouldn't it? Because that's what you mean. Like when you're saying, it's a World Cup year, he needs to be playing a lot because he wants to start for the Netherlands. If you've got to convince him, and that's going to be partly, those things that we've said, and then partly, what the contract would look like as well.
Yeah, I mean, part of me is a little bit annoyed why we didn't, if we're going to spend money on a backup right wing back, why we didn't push harder for Jonathan Klaus. It would have been 10 million euros, I think 8 million quid. Again, he's just broken into the France squad. I know he would want to be playing regular football to get that World Cup squad place. He probably wouldn't get regular football at Chelsea, but it would still be it would be semi-regular, you would have expected. So, I mean, are you surprised that we didn't push a bit harder for that?
Well, I imagine that one was Tuchel looked at him and went, yeah, sure. Do you know what I mean? Like for 10 million, it's hard to be like, oh, he was
not really a downside, is there?
That's the thing. It's like it's hard to see a downside in that kind of investment. But maybe ultimately just wasn't quite the right player that Tuchel was looking for. Maybe it's not quite the right physicality or whatever. I don't know. Tuchel, same with Koundé in a way, will have seen something in him that he's not really the biggest fan of, and so maybe not pushed for him so much. I think someone like Mailer might be better. Just because, again, 2-footed, very versatile player, has been said in the chat here. It's hard to see a downside in bringing in any wing back, but I think Mailer would be my choice.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I agree. I think just a bit more versatility there, probably slightly cheaper as well. But an interesting one, man. That's kind of like I think Ruben could potentially be. I don't think it would be a total disaster if we went into next season with Ruben as the second choice right wing back, because I think it suits him really well. I mean, we sort kind of stumbled across it last season, and to be fair, every game he's played there, he's done really well. All right, yes, defensively he needs to improve, of course, but actually going forwards, he's phenomenal. He's such a good athlete. He's running the ball, he's powerful, he's got great strength, he's got a good finish, he's got good passing ability, and he almost plays as like a right-sided midfield player when he's playing in that right wing back. So I think it's more of that hybrid position where you come inside to midfield. Yeah, as I said,
it's the same with it, I think, and it depends what kind of game that Tuchel is looking for. If he needs, Loftus-Cheek provides that same option that James does in a physical, technically strong presence on the right hand side, but also Loftus-Cheek is a better dribbler than Reece James. I don't think that's a controversial thing to say. No. Reece James is better at everything else, but Loftus-Cheek is a better dribbler. And then you've got the likes actually as well of Callum Hudson-Odoi, who played against Udinese at wing back as well. And, we all know Hudson-Odoi probably isn't the most happy there, but we also have to remember that actually our wing backs are probably some of the most attacking players in the team. Yeah. And actually having, playing at wing back isn't like being relegated to defensive duties. It's a part of Tuchel's system, and it's really important. And, it's probably the most important position in the team in a way. And so Hudson-Odoi as well provides something different on that right hand side. He's more of a classic winger, like gets down the byline and gets the touchline and brings across it. And sometimes that's what you need. Whereas, James is a bit more of maybe you could call him more of a technical specialist from a little bit further out. and then Loftus-Cheek provides that dribbling motion as well. So you could say we have the tools to actually make it fit regardless of where we are, like who plays at right wing back. But at the same time, is it still putting a square peg in a round hole?
Kind of is.
You could see it that way. Yeah. Like again, like at the end of the day, you're putting players who actually aren't that position and just hoping they do a job. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. As we've seen, Loftus-Cheek does a great job when he plays there. But I think maybe you'd be smarter to actually still get a backup wing back, because as I said, Tuchel likes a system where the players are a little bit interchangeable anyway. People can still play at wing back or midfield or up front or as part of a false nine or whatever. And that will suit Tuchel, I think, a lot better.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I don't think it would be a total disaster if a backup wing back didn't come in. But we're saying it now. Loftus-Cheek would be great there. We'd be the first ones to say if James got injured and we had to use Ruben there for say 5, 6, 7, 8 games on the spin, we'd be the first ones to say, "Oh, why didn't we sign a backup wing back?
Exactly.
Why didn't we do that?" Like yes, I'm saying I'm like I think it would work, but then at the same time you've got to be realistic about it. Would we be happy with Ruben playing a long string of games there in a row?
And that's the thing. It's difficult. We all know that Ruben's fairly versatile, can even play up top as well. As a big physical presence up front or at false nine or whatever. But is he the man to deputise with Reece there? I don't know. I think he would need a really big step up in his game to actually be there. If you get a lot of big games every season. Reece James isn't going to be around for everyone. Can you imagine Loftus-Cheek versus Luis Diaz or Salah or Son?
He did do well in the Bernabeu. Fair play to him. But on a week in, week out basis, I get what you're saying. Like you wouldn't be the most comfortable in games where you're not going to do a lot of defending. Yeah, absolutely fine. But against the likes of, say, Manchester City or a Liverpool or whatnot, I wouldn't be the most confident. I would rather have a kind of a specialist player, quote unquote, in that position. But it's definitely it's an interesting proposition because he has done very well there, and he impressed again in the preseason, which we'll come on to. But mate, I want to move on to the goalkeepers now. I got this up on the screen here. This deal's done now, I think almost certainly. It's been a little while in the making, but. Gabriel or Gargastanina to Chelsea is done. Agreement $15 million with add-ons included for the young Chicago firekeeper. He'll finish the season with Chicago before joining Chelsea on January 1st. I've seen a few highlight reels of him. I'm not going to pretend that I've sat and watched any of him because I haven't watched any MLS. I haven't seen him. But he looks like a talented goalkeeper, promising. Obviously one for the future. He'll join up in January. It's good to see that we're planning for the future, Oli. But moving just quickly, thoughts on Selena? Very much, I guess you've not watched much of him either, but it's good to see the club kind of planning for the future and building for the future as well.
Yeah, not seeing too much of him play. Like same as most people, I imagine. A few highlights here and there. Seems like a reasonably talented kid. Only 18 years old, born in 2004. So it's hard to go wrong on what bought him for the equivalent of like £12 million or something like that. So it's quite a low risk. Maybe you could argue it's a bit high risk for a player who's he's essentially only a young kid, but. I don't see that being a bad thing at all. Although you can say this might be indicative of actually what's going to happen for Kepa. Especially in terms of whether he goes on loan or whether he leaves or what happens. I think they're planning for one of Kepa or Mendy to leave, and I would imagine Kepa's more likely.
Yeah, it brings me on nicely to the next point, mate. Reports emanating from the Athletic out of Dimarzio as well. Dimarzio are probably only trusting with Italian news. They're pretty spot on with that. And Nathan Gissin reporting that Chelsea and Napoli in talks over a loan deal for Kepa. Main target for Napoli as a goalkeeper. Other clubs have shown interest, but Napoli are leading the race. I think it's believed to be a loan deal with Chelsea covering reportedly 3/4 of the wages. Now, I've got two things here. I understand that, again, it's a World Cup year. Kepa will want to play regular football to try and get that starting position for Spain, secure his place in the squad. Chelsea want to try and increase his market value. And I suppose if he goes out on loan, has a really good season at Napoli, that increases his value in the transfer market. But then at the same time, I'm thinking, well, if we're going to pay 3/4 of his wages anyway, and we're only going to loan him, we might as well keep him, because then what do we do? Okay, Kepa goes out on loan. You need a goalkeeper as a backup that's pretty decent,
Yeah, otherwise you're going to be relying on the likes of Teddy Sharman Lowe or something. Not a bad keeper in and of himself, but.
But then they look at it and you think, right, Bettinelli would then step up to number 2, seemingly. Bettinelli's played one game for Chelsea against Chesterfield in the Cup. Like Bettinelli,
and he did let one in.
Yeah, he's not going to be the answer. But then do you think with this Slonina deal that surely there's no way that Chelsea are thinking we'll let Kepa go out on loan, we'll use Bettinelli as the number 2 until January, and then when Slonina arrives, he'll just take the number 2 spot. Surely if Kepa's going out on loan, would you expect Chelsea to bring in another second choice keeper? Because what we've currently got at the club, yes, some young promising goalkeepers, but no one that's good enough to step up and be the number 2.
I think I think it's very unlikely that Bettinelli would be the number 2.
I think this creates a big problem if we do this.
It would be more likely you'd bring up someone like Teddy Sharman-Lowe, who's is talented enough, but probably can't hold that sort of position on his own. But I think that's perfectly possible to happen. The other thing as well is that I've seen people say is actually, say it quietly, but Mendy's been struggling a bit.
Yeah, I was going to come on to that.
And actually, if we then send Kepa out, we don't actually have a reliable backup at all if Mendy is shitting the bed every week. He let in a very poor goal against Udinese, and you can't explain for that. Ever since he came back from the AFCON, his confidence seems to have dropped a bit, which is a bit strange considering he's just won an international tournament. But I don't know what's happened with him, but he seems to be struggling a little bit. And you'd say at this point, possibly, like Kepa's been looking, Kepa's looking for game time. It's a World Cup year. If Mendy's struggling, does he fight for his place? Because the other thing as well,
and do if he's struggling. That's the thing. It's like you want competition with your goalkeepers, but if Kepa goes out on loan, Mendy would then know that every single week, regardless of how he performs, he's obviously going to play because Tuchel's not going to drop him and stick Bettinelli in or someone from the academy.
It's unlikely, isn't it? But, you never know. The other thing as well is, obviously, Kepa's got quite a long contract with Chelsea.
It's like 7 years, wasn't it?
He's got a contract to 2025 or something like that. Like, it's quite a while. So even if he does go out on loan and he has a good season, and say Mendy has a bad season, doesn't necessarily mean we'd be selling Kepa. It means, Kepa could actually come back in and then go and do a job again. And maybe Mendy would move on or something. I don't know. I'm just speculating. But, I don't think Kepa going out on loan is necessarily a bad thing. It's just about if you have to then count on Mendy, who hasn't been in the best form recently, to perform. But he does seem like someone to me who rises to the occasion. So maybe knowing that he's the only guy who can actually reasonably keep Chelsea in competitions and things like that, from a goalkeeping perspective, will actually, give him a kick up the backside a bit.
Yeah, I mean, we've been blessed at Chelsea with phenomenal goalkeepers over the years. having 2 essentially number 1 goalkeepers. When we had Kudacini and Cech, when we had Cech and Courtois
and Begovic, even
Courtois and Begovic as well. Then going on to obviously Kepa and Mendy, we've been blessed to have very good depth in the goalkeeping position. And mate, obviously, I think a loan move for Kepa would be beneficial massively for himself to just go and play regular football again. I think he's done a good job since Tuchel's been here. When he's been called upon, I don't really think he's put a foot wrong in between the sticks necessarily. But I understand that a young goalkeeper, you want to go and play, you want to develop your game further. This would make sense for him, but I'm not sure how much this makes sense for Chelsea, because if we do let him go, Oli, do you envisage another goalkeeper being brought in then? Because I wouldn't feel confident going with backup choices with the form that Mendy's in, with what we've currently got. I would feel that someone else would have to come in if we sanction this Kepa loan.
I don't think anyone would come in unless we also let Bettinelli go and then brought in someone else who's a bit better than Bettinelli. Yeah, like someone who's like the equivalent of like a Willy Caballero. Who was also an excellent goalkeeper for us.
He was not bad.
So I think it would be a lot of work now to actually, because you'd be essentially have to let 2 goalkeepers go and then bring one in as well. And to be honest, nobody is probably going to buy Bettinelli. Not really.
It's not worth anything, is he?
Not really. And so, so it's an interesting one and it's a difficult one at the same time. I think, like you say, it probably works more for Kepa than it does for Chelsea.
100%, yeah.
The only thing you just want to avoid is the possibility that it's a World Cup year. We block Kepa's move. Mendy has a good season. Then good, you've got like a couple good backups, but then Kepa doesn't play. Kepa doesn't go to the World Cup. Kepa gets frustrated, pushes for a move. And then, we sell him for peanuts. So it's important to actually consider what would make the player happy as well. it's a difficult one. I think the most likely thing that happens if Kepa goes on loan is actually we do just stick it out for 6 months and wait for Slonina.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think that's probably the most plausible thing. What we got in the chat here, I haven't actually got to the chat yet so far in this stream. Big up everyone in the chat, by the way. What we got here, Sanchez from Brighton. Again, he's a good goalkeeper.
Yeah, like him.
I like him as well. Whether that would happen is debatable. I've seen on Twitter, obviously not the greatest of sources, but people wanting Keylor Navas from PSG.
I think that's a poor decision, in my opinion. He'd be better than Bettinelli as a backup, no question.
Oh, he's probably better than Kepa. I think Navas is a phenomenal goalkeeper, but
I thought he had a bit of a poor season in the second half of last season. Other than the champion, wait, is he? He's at PSG now, isn't he?
He's at PSG now. Yeah,
at PSG. He did okay. I'm not sure he's. Yeah, he's a bit,
I just feel on this goalkeepers thing that, as we've just discussed, last thing on it, I just feel that if we were to sanction Kepa alone, it's better for Kepa than it is for Chelsea. I think it creates more of a problem for Chelsea if we let him go.
Could we somehow maybe get one of Napoli's keepers to come the other way? Someone who's a little bit more experienced than, say, Bettinelli?
I mean, maybe. I don't really know. But yeah, I feel that's something that will probably go into the window. But mate, I wanted to just quickly get on to what we got here. Let me just get to this quickly. 75 million too much for Fofana. I don't know. I've sort of given up now with transfer fees. At the end of the day, I'm just thinking, I want the players in. It's not my money. It's not your money. It's not any of our money.
It's not my money.
So at the end of the day, if we've got to pay slightly over the odds to get someone in, then so be it. I'd rather pay over the odds to get someone than refuse to cough the money up and miss out. So it's not our money either. So yeah, I think is 75 million a lot of money? Yeah, of course it is. But look at potential, massive potential there.
Just to say, Ramen Guy as well. Just to say, Ramen Guy in the chat said Chelsea bought a keeper yesterday already, but he's going back on loan to Chicago
he's
until January. Yeah. So if we were to let Kepa go, Mendy would basically be our only first team keeper.
He would. So. But yeah, guys, big up everyone in the chat, by the way. Also, guys, make sure you smash the likes if you haven't done already. Let's get those likes up. And please do subscribe to the channel as well. You haven't done so already. We're over 1,000 subscribers now. Hit that in the last week or so. We're heading towards 1.1k, 1.2k. So let's make sure we get there. So if you're in the chat now, you're not subscribed, please do click that subscribe button. Mate, moving away from kind of transfer news, I just wanted to quickly touch on the end of the pre-season. Rounded out with 2 games against Udinese, 2 different sides, one on Friday night, one Saturday morning. Let's start with the game on Friday night. That, for me, give or take 1 or 2 players, is very much going to be the large basis of the side that you would expect to start against Everton.
100%.
Obviously, maybe Chilwell comes in. I think probably not. Possibly Chalobah instead of Aspie, maybe. But other than that, maybe Kovacic. Other than 1 or 2 positions, that's pretty much the team that's going to start. And first half particularly, I thought we played really well. There was great link-up play with Mount and Sterling. Kante was phenomenal in the midfield. Jorginho was great as well. Defensively, we didn't have much to do, but we did well when called into action. Yes, we unfortunately let them run right through our midfield, which was a little bit of a concern. But generally, I thought we played very well. I thought Sterling was phenomenal. Just a player that is so refreshing. I'm not comparing Sterling to Eden Hazard, but we haven't had someone in the attack since Eden Hazard that picks the ball up and directly runs at players and makes things happen. Sterling was. I know it's only Udinese, whatever, fine. But we've seen so much promise from him in this pre-season that he's going to be a phenomenal player for us. Just taking players on, exciting, makes things happen. Mount was looking good as well. Good link-up play. As I said, Kante. I think, ironically, the rest probably, by not travelling to the States, has done Kante the world of good. We talked about it last time you were on, just managing his minutes, making sure he gets rest. He looks really refreshed, and he put in a really, really good performance. But yeah, mate, what did you make of the Friday night, that game? I mean, those guys were the standouts. Obviously, we'll get on to Kai Havertz, who I thought was poor again, and that's a bit of a conundrum for us at the moment. But yeah, what did you make of the Friday night performance? I thought it was our best of the pre-season.
Yeah, I enjoyed the performance very much. I thought almost everybody had a pretty good game. I probably don't think Havertz had quite as poor a game as you possibly did, but I thought he did all right, got himself into good positions, and the finishing will come. You just keep getting into those positions, and it'll happen. I equate his performance very much to the one Broja had on the following.
Oh morning.
Yeah, I thought it was good. Kante, as I said, I've been saying this for months. Just give him a break and he'll shine. We all knew this because every manager just runs him into the ground. Thought he did really well. Jorginho was running things a little bit defensively sloppy in places, but actually offensively was really picking good passes, making good forward passes, and that's what we want to see from him. Especially, if he's not making those forward passes, he shouldn't be playing. Because just keeping the game ticking over isn't enough now. He needs to be able to actually move the ball forward, and he did that really well against Udinese. I was very impressed, especially against with his pass to Sterling for Sterling's goal.
Yeah,
A bit lucky from him that he managed to sort of bundle it into the net, but they all count. I thought he was very good, really exciting, as you said, linked up with Mount really well, like he does for England. A really, really good job. I would say almost everybody played pretty well. The only other standout, which I would say who wasn't quite as good, was obviously Mendy. Mendy, the goal that he let in
it was poor.
Was poor, but he did make another couple other saves which were all right. So goalkeepers are only ever valued on only if they make one mistake ever. So it's difficult. Thought Koulibaly was absolutely monstrous as well.
He
did
was class.
really good job.
Good at bringing the ball out as well from the
back.
Yeah,
filled in that sort of what we call that Rudiger role of sort of like bringing the ball out from the back, spraying diagonals left and right. Really impressed with him. Glad we finally got our man on that one. And obviously, Thiago Silva is Thiago Silva, the man who never ages, the man who never ever has a bad game. It's just craziness.
It is. I thought it was a really promising performance. I mean, we did touch on it just briefly beforehand, but are you concerned about Mendy's form? A really poor error for the Udinese goal. He's been a little bit error prone throughout the preseason. He's not looked that good. Even the back end of last season, you could argue he was starting to look a little bit shaky. You mentioned that his form's not quite been there since the AFCON. Is his form a concern going into the start of this season for you?
Maybe, but at the same time, he is a model professional, and perhaps even partially bringing in the likes of Koulibaly, who was obviously his Senegalese teammate. He's going to shore up the back line. He's instantly got that more of that chemistry with him straight away, which of course allows the chemistry as well from Koulibaly to Jorginho in midfield. So instantly you've got like a more fluid movement from goalkeeper to midfield. It's certainly, I think that will fill in with more confidence, having someone he knows really well in the back line. And, a goalkeeping, it's the same as, it's funny really, it's the only similarity really between being a goalkeeper and being a striker is it's a 99% confidence position. You can be good or bad at your job, but, you're instrumentally better or worse based on the amount of confidence you have. And I think for whatever reason, Mendy's confidence has been pretty low. But like I said, he's a model professional. Now he's got more chemistry in his back line. He'll feel more protected by his back line as well, especially if we get Fofana as well. Then you're going to have, Silva, Koulibaly, Fofana. Might be one of the best back lines in the league, you could argue. At that point, he's got no excuse to not have the confidence, really. And so, if he continued to struggle after that, then obviously that's a concern because you think, well, what's happened? His form's dropped off a cliff, but we can't be worrying about if buts and coconuts, right? Yeah. So I would say he just needs a little bit more, maybe he's just sloppy. It is pre-season, just needs to tighten his game up a little bit. I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, I think he'll be all right. Yes, it's a slight concern, but I think it would become more of a concrete concern if in the first sort of 2-3 games of the league season, he makes a couple of errors, then perhaps it's more of a serious conversation to have. But at the time being, I don't think it's a complete disaster. Mate, I wanted to, before I get to a few bits in the chat, I wanted to touch on Kai Havertz. Mm-hmm. By all accounts, it's a massive season for Kai now. 3rd season coming up at Chelsea. Let's be honest, he's been a moments player, if we're being totally honest. We probably would have been expecting more for the £70 million that he paid for him, considering how good he was in the Bundesliga. I know it's a different league, but you look at what he's doing at Bayer Leverkusen, creating, scoring goals, doing everything really. He's come to Chelsea and he's not really done that. It's still a couple of great moments, Champions League final goal, Club World Cup winning goal, a good purple patch at the back end of the season for a month or so. But if we're being honest with ourselves, he's got to deliver this season. He has to. This is a time where he's got. I'm not saying he's a 20 goals a season striker. He's not. He's not that sort of player. But it's got to be 10 to 12 goals in the Premier League minimum. And on the evidence of pre-season, I want Kai to do well, but I'm just not seeing how that's going to transcribe into this season, that he's actually going to be any better than he was last season. Yes, having Sterling will help. Yes, an improved Mount around him will probably help as well. But his finishing's still not there. I think he spends too long on the ball. I don't think he occupies centre-backs very well. I don't think he uses his strength very well. Look, I want him to do well, of course, but for me, there's quite a few question marks there still. And I think going into the start of the season where currently he's the main option with Broja, who's not played much football at all for Chelsea, 45 minutes, and that's it. I've got to say I'm a bit concerned by the options at the top end of the pitch. I mean, I know you're probably slightly more positive on Kai, but would you accept that this is where the penny's got to drop for Kai this season? He has to step up and deliver. He has to deliver something that we haven't seen so far.
Maybe, but I think what you've got to remember at the same time, like you say, he seems like a moments player, and you can largely put up a lot of his inconsistency to the fact that he is still so young. He's only 21, 22, something like that. So he's still quite a young player, So to say this is make or break, and you've got to hold the entire front line together, even for the amount that we paid for him, I think that's quite a lot to put on such a young player's shoulders. Someone like Mount or James can do it. Maybe Havertz can't. Do you know what I mean? So it'd be the equivalent of saying, or it would be an equivalent of saying to Ampadu, now you've got to be the man. Now you've got to step up. You have to. This is a make or break season for you. And to a certain degree, that's true as well. But I'm not sure if that pressure will actually help him or hinder him. Do you know what I mean? Also, it's important to mention that actually at Bayer Leverkusen, he was playing more of a right-sided cam rather than a striker, out-and-out striker. So he's still kind of learning the ropes. And even though he's still learning the ropes, he's still scoring goals and doing a good job, in my opinion. He could be doing better, but he still didn't get the whole season last season.
No.
At being centre forward. Now he's the main man. Now he is the striker, right? There is almost, there's no question now. He has to be the one, who's starting in the forward position on the lineup against Everton. But as well, it's important to remember that I don't think he'll be exclusively playing at centre forward, especially with the more fluid front three that Tuchel loves to use, especially against Udinese. That was really good with Mount and Sterling coming in and like swapping wings, and Havertz went out wide a few times and things like that. And that's going to wreak havoc for defenders. So I think it's a little bit difficult to actually put all the pressure on Kai specifically. And it's easy to see that when you can say, well, he's the only out-and-out striker at the club, really. And, we've paid a lot of money for him. Thanks for the Champions League goal. Now it's time to deliver and become consistent.
Yeah.
But you could say the same, actually. You could say, actually, the goal scoring is up to that entire fluid front three.
It's not just all on Kai, yeah.
So, and Mount's proved it in the last few seasons. He's been excellent. Sterling has proved it as well in his time as Man City. I think actually, between the three of them, we need to be looking at a lot of goals this season between the three of them.
Yeah.
Not necessarily just on Kai. If he's not scoring them, he has to be setting them up. So I do understand, to a certain degree, that it's time for him to sort of kick on and become like the main man up front in a way. Be that focal point for the attack, but at the same time he's playing a slightly different role than you would necessarily expect. He's playing in a fluid front three rather than a flat front three.
I just think we need to see more consistency from him, and as you say, if he's not scoring, he needs to be contributing in another way. We can't have it where we've had it in the past where games just drift him by and he doesn't contribute in any way at all.
Yeah, but he has contributed last season, it's not. Is it as much as people would have wanted? Absolutely not.
No.
But you've got to remember as well that Lukaku was also playing for a large portion of the season. Whenever he could, Lukaku was playing and because of. So the way I see it as well is having Lukaku in the team, obviously it made the tactics a bit more pushed towards the concept of like a flat centre forward. Like a big target man centre forward. And obviously that's not Havertz at all. Now Lukaku's not the focus of the attack. We actually have more of a fluid idea in terms of the front three. I think it will suit him a lot better.
Yeah, I hope it does. I really do hope it does. I mean, mate, before I get to a few bits in the chat, I just wanted to touch on the Saturday morning game. Obviously, we won that 2-0. We saw a host of other players. Loftus-Cheek impressed a lot. Thought Callum Hudson-Odoi actually did well. I was glad he got an assist on Friday night. That was positive from him. But we'll talk about Broja. We got, obviously, he was injured in the States, went back for rehab, tried to get a move to West Ham. They went for Scamacca instead. And now it doesn't seem like he's leaving at the moment. He's played no minutes in pre-season up until the Saturday morning. He played 45 minutes. He looked a bit rusty, as you'd expect, having played no football since the last day of the season, last season at Southampton. He did okay, missed a few chances, which a lot of Chelsea forwards have done, and to continue to do so. What do you think? What do you reckon of his prospects this season? Do you think now he definitely stays? And how big a role do you feel he can play? I mean, I thought he did well at Southampton for the first half of the season, tailed off massively, but he's only 20 years of age, or 21. Yes, he got 6 or 8 Premier League goals. I think 6 were in the first half of the season, 2 in the second half. There's potential there, but do you feel that Chelsea needs something a bit better than Broja, but not quite as good as Havertz, or something that's actually as good as or better than Havertz, and Broja is just going to fill in somewhere else, maybe?
I'm quite happy with the concept of having Broja as a backup to Havertz. As sort of like the more sort of strikery centre forward that we have. I thought he got himself into good positions. He did more or less everything but score. You know, and you could say, oh well, that's the story of Chelsea's season last season and the season before, and that's the problem with our attackers. But actually, I was really encouraged for such a young player. Who doesn't have a huge amount of minutes for Chelsea. It doesn't have a huge amount of cohesion or chemistry with the other players who are playing. Because, like you said, 45 minutes, for Chelsea ever, apart from the preseason games, he's done really, really well. I think considering that, I think I would be happy with him, coming off the bench most games. We've got 5 subs. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in a lot of games coming up this season. He seems like a natural finisher and a natural centre forward. I know it sounds silly to say he sounds like a natural finisher when he did everything but score the other day, but you can see, you can definitely see that there's a player in there. The question is, I suppose, is some people will think he's good enough for Chelsea and some people won't. I personally think he is good enough, especially as a backup.
Is he good enough right now? Possibly not, but can he be good enough? I think he can be good enough, but the only way we're going to find out is if we actually give him a chance. That's the thing.
100%. That's what you've got to be looking at, and you could say that. Like you say, you could say he's not ready now, but if he's not ready now, when will he be ready? So in my opinion, you should just throw him in and see what he does. As a backup, you can't do that bad. 6 to 8 goals for a forward player is basically what we've been averaging for a lot of forward players in the last few seasons anyway. He did that for Southampton.
Well, I think he's got...
why not?
And as you say, he's got a very good opportunity. It looks like Timo Werner's on his way out the door. If Broja gets a few games, which he will, and he scores a few goals and he impresses, he'll start ahead of Havertz. Broja has got an opportunity to potentially secure himself as potentially the main number 9 option at Chelsea. There's a very good chance of him doing that. Or if not, he's going to get a lot of minutes to impress anyway. So I think he should just get his head down and stay. I never really quite understood, when there's quite a clear pathway for him to play first team minutes, why he wanted out in the first place. But I think there's definitely an opportunity there. But yeah, mate, to round out, I'm just going to get to a few things in the chat. What we got here, where are we?
I think I'm being complimented.
Yeah. Do I rate Dumfries? I think he's okay. Is he the best? Is he like phenomenal? Not really. He'll have good squad depth, and I think that's what we need. He had good strength in depth, which we haven't got in that area. So yeah, I like the signing. Are there better players out there? Yes, but I think he would be prepared to come in and do a job. And I think I do rate him, but he's not like. Of course, there's better players out there, but I actually think as a signing, this wouldn't be too bad at all. So I think
you could do a lot worse. Honestly, I really do. I think I think a lot of people don't rate Dumfries, but I think ultimately. I think he'd do just fine.
Yeah, I think he would as well. What we got here? This is one that, again, I think I've seen Simon Phillips talk about this, and it's one we've been linked with for a long time. I remember under Antonio Conte when Adama was at Middlesbrough, we were always linked with him. I think there were links there last summer as well. I think, but it didn't quite materialise. I mean, it looks like if Dumfries was to prove too expensive or he didn't want to come for whatever reasons. I mean, personally, I wouldn't be that against Adama at right wing back as a
neither.
I don't think
at the same time,
20 million quid. Would it be that bad?
I reckon it depends on the price, doesn't it? Because I reckon I was saying earlier about Loftus-Cheek provides the sort of the dribbling and Hudson-Odoi provides the pace and sort of like the natural winger option. You could say Traore is sort of a mix of both. He's got the strength of and the dribbling, and he's got the speed. The only thing he really would need to work on, obviously, is if he's playing right wing back. Obviously, we need to remember that actually is offensively a very important player for Chelsea, and we all know his his form in front of goal is not.
Yeah, it's not great. We perhaps don't want another finisher like him in the front line.
I think it could be asking for trouble.
could be asking trouble. I wouldn't be against it. I wouldn't be against it for squad depth. I wouldn't. I think we've discussed that Broja thing. We've set out, mate. This is an interesting one, and I've thought about this because it's appeared a number of times when I've been streaming, and I've seen people talk about it on Twitter. Barcelona are blessed with a lot of forward options: Lewandowski, Aubameyang, Ferran Torres, Rafinha, Ansu Fati, Ousmane Dembele, and obviously Depay is still there as well. We need a mobile forward. I think he's very talented. He's a good finisher, can play either side as well. I don't think he'd cost an awful lot of money. What would you make of a potential? I'm not saying it's going to happen, but a move for Memphis Depay, I think it ticks a lot of boxes.
Could do a lot worse. I think the important thing to think about though as well is like his mentality. You know, like if he's going to cause any problems in the dressing room, things like that, because we know he's been made. You know, he's done that at times at Barcelona, and he definitely did it sometimes at Man United as well. I wouldn't be against the deal necessarily because I think he's tactically what we're looking for. I think we just got to be careful about the mentality of the player specifically. But if he comes in, does the job, pulls up his bootstraps and just goes for it, why not?
I think it would be good. I mean, just on this, mate, how disappointed are you that we seemingly didn't push harder for Gabriel Jesus, seeing how well he's done in pre-season? Someone like him would have been perfect for us. Someone that can obviously play in the centre forward position and is versatile as well. I mean, it would have been great, and it's disappointing. Yeah, I know we got Sterling, and perhaps City wouldn't have sold both of them to us, but are you disappointed we didn't push a bit harder for him?
Not really, and the reason I say that is obviously Gabriel Jesus is a talented forward, and Chelsea look like they're struggling in the forward department. I'm just not sure he's that much of a needle mover in terms of actually what you need. Clearly he's talented, but I don't know. I just personally, for me, I don't really see it. I think he might have a good start for Arsenal. He might even have a good season for Arsenal, but yeah. I'm not sure I see him being the main. I don't think I could see him being the main man for us personally.
No, that's fair. That's fair. What else we got here? Where are we going? Depay, yeah, we've just done that. This is another one that I think I've seen this reported somewhere. I don't know how credible the source was. I can't see this happening. I mean, this
annoys me so much.
I think Vardy's a phenomenal player. Actually, he's a fantastic goal scorer. He's a great finisher. But I don't really think we play to what his strengths are.
It's not a Chelsea signing at all.
That's the thing.
He is an excellent forward in terms of counter-attacking, finishing quickly, things like that. If you put him against a low block, he's useless. He's pointless because there's just not the ability there to be able to actually, he's doing his best when he's running at defenders on the counter and things like that. Chelsea are very rarely doing that at the moment. We're a possession-based team. So, if you're buying him, you're buying essentially like a 35, 36-year-old striker who isn't what you need tactically for the club.
Then if you were going to do that, why would you not just buy Ronaldo instead?
Exactly. If you're going to go for an older striker who doesn't fit in tactically necessarily with what you're trying to do, at least sell some shirts for it.
Yeah, 100%, mate. 100% agreed on that one. I was about to say something and I've forgotten. I'm going to bring this up now. Sorry. Best to worst. Well, they don't all play in the same position, but if we're going with the centre backs, I'll probably say I think Fofana, Skriniar, then Pavard, and then is Dumfries better than Gvardiol? I'm not really sure. But I mean, either of those. I mean, I wouldn't. Other than Pavard, I'd be pretty happy if any two of those four actually came, or any two of those. If he signed two of those five, I'd be pretty pleased with that.
I think,
to be honest.
To be honest, I think Dumfries and another one of them, and I would be reasonably pleased. Or a wing back and one of them, I'd be pretty happy. Fofana's probably the best one for me, and then Skriniar, and then Gvardiol, and then Pavard probably. I don't think outside of a really good goal he scored. What was it in what international tournament? Was it the World Cup?
I think it was. He scored a phenomenal volley, didn't he? It was absolutely
one of the best goals I've ever seen on telly. It was incredible.
Was a joke, wasn't it? It was.
But there comes a point where you say, well, we can't sign him off that alone, unfortunately.
Yeah, imagine him and his agent going around with that goal on
the
loop,
one where,
mate.
The one where it's the angles behind him. And
this guy can do this. But
exactly. And so I'm not sure he would be the best option, but any of the others I'd personally be happy with.
Yeah, and last thing, mate, one that I see pop in the chat, but I can't scroll back to get it. Frankie de Jong, this seems to be not really, like, it's hanging about, really. Obviously, Manchester United firmly interested in him. For whatever reason, that still hasn't happened yet. It still could happen.
He really doesn't want to go there.
But then, no, I don't think he does. But then there's been potential links to Chelsea as well. Now, I don't know if Chelsea would. Barcelona obviously need him to take a wage cut, reportedly, so they can register some new signings. They obviously need to sell players to get money in, of course. I think he's a great player, really do. And arguably probably done the best out of that 2018-19 Ajax side, that those players that left, you probably could say he's done the best. I think he's great, but he's not really the profile of midfield player I think Chelsea need.
But
I wouldn't. But then again, I wouldn't say no to it either. But I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I'm torn because yes, like you say, like he's clearly a very talented player, and maybe he could even slot in at centre back. But less said about that, the better. But I think I'm torn between how much I like him as a player and how much I want to see Barcelona suffer. And I think I want to see Barcelona suffer more.
I'd respect him more if he didn't take a pay cut. They couldn't register those players.
And at the moment, that's kind of what's happening.
Yeah.
So so I would actually, I am enjoying him versus Barcelona at the moment. I think it's crazy what they're doing with him. Telling him he needs to make a pay cut. He needs to take a pay cut for things. He obviously shouldn't. It's nuts to me personally. The way he's being paid is an interesting way as well. Where he's actually being paid at the end of his contract in a lump sum rather than
per week. Weird that.
So it's all kind of down to that, because that's the reason they can't afford extra signings, because I think if they then have to pay him out for his wages, they can't afford things based on FFP and things like that. Yeah. So it's really interesting, but I'd rather watch Barcelona liquidate and burn to the ground at the moment. So
mate, I might be petty, but I would thoroughly celebrate that.
It's so petty, it really is. I I just don't care. Mate,
I agree. Right, last thing, mate. Would you say Fofana is another level to Koundé? I think right now there's probably not much difference to them. I think Koundé's probably 2-3 years older than him, probably more experienced, played at a higher level. But having said that, I think Fofana's probably got a higher ceiling. I think he's got a greater potential than Koundé does. But right now, I'd probably say Koundé's definitely no worse.
I think Fofana is actually probably the better player on the basis that he has more Premier League experience. He wouldn't have to bed in. He's a little bit taller as well. You got to remember that. Although, height isn't the be all and end all for defenders. We all know that. So saying, like buying a defender who's even like 5'5", it wouldn't matter, in my opinion. But having that extra, a little bit extra going forward, say for corners and things like that, is helpful. So yeah, I think I personally would take Fofana over Koundé. I think, like I said earlier, I think Chelsea have kind of stumbled into the best option at centre back in terms of Fofana. So I really hope we get it done.
I would agree, and I know I said last one a couple of times. I'll just address this. The Inter Milan midfield player, he's young. I think he's 18, 19. I don't think he plays in the first team very much. Do you know much about him? I don't know if this deal's done yet. I think Chelsea are interested, but it would very much be one I'd imagine for the under-23s.
Could see it happening, but I don't know. It could happen, it might not happen. It's not really that. It's definitely not a needle moving thing. Apparently he's quite good, but you'd have to prove it for me.
Mate, I totally agree. But yeah, that seems like a good point to round out. Plenty of news covered. There should be lots more stuff coming up in the next week or so as we build up to the start of the season. I mean, I've been saying that for the last couple of weeks now, but hopefully there'll be some more concrete transfer news this coming week. Hopefully a bid in for Fofana, maybe a bid in for Dumfries, maybe some other players as well. Who knows? Hopefully a few of the Deadwood players will move on, the likes of Batshuayi, the likes of Malang Sarr, potentially. Maybe Timo Werner will finally get his move away. But yeah, lots to get covered in the next week or so as we build up to Everton away. Guys, thanks so much for getting involved in the chat. I really appreciate it as always. As I said before, please make sure you smash the likes. Let's get those likes up. And please do subscribe to the channel as well. Help me move towards the 1.1k mark. I think it's about 30, 40 subs to go. So if you're not subscribed, please do subscribe to the channel as we aim to hit that next milestone. Oli, thanks for your time as always, mate. Always a pleasure. If people want to check out what you do and stuff, Twitter, best place. I've linked it in the description. Anywhere else they should go?
No, that's all. Just Twitter at Oli J Carpenter. You can see it here on the screen here. And just give me a follow. You might enjoy the things I have to say. Sometimes you won't. Sometimes, you know, people think I might be a little bit controversial at times, but I personally don't think so. It's my opinion. Yeah, check me out, and also subscribe to Charlie, because Blues Brothers is a great project, what they got going on, and you'll be very, very happy with what he's got coming up soon.
Nah, thanks a lot, mate. Appreciate it. Yeah, guys, as you said, make sure you smash a like, subscribe, and I'll be back on Tuesday lunchtime where I'll be joined by the great Ben Jacobs. So plenty to discuss there. So yeah, make sure you tune in for that, guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and catch you in the next couple of days. Up the Chels.